applause, you don't know if it's going to be crap or any interesting, so wait before you boo me. Yeah. All right, so thank you for having me. So my name is Alexandre Mandryka, and I'm going to talk to you about the DNA of a blockbuster. So what I mean by this is, you know, I worked at Ubisoft, and we made like big games. And there's kind of a way to think about how to see what's going to have big success. It's almost like there's a way to cheat the, you know, rolling the lottery. There's a way to cheat it. And I'm going to share with you what I've learned about how to read these signs about what is going to be interesting for people, and you tell me what you think. All right, so a bit about me. I was born in Paris. At first, I studied biology because I wanted to study the human mind. And I got bored of test tubes and university, so then I said, hey, what else do I like? Video games. And actually, I realized to make good video games, you have to understand the human mind. So now I'm using all the psychology that I've learned to actually make good games. I worked for 5 years in France, and then I moved to Montreal, where I changed my haircut. And I worked at Ubisoft and Relic Entertainment as director of design for the studios. There was like tons of designers, tons of projects, and I was basically coaching the teams on the creative process. And so it's not that I'm super smart, it's just that I've been exposed to so many projects that I can pretty much see like the patterns. And so that's what I'm going to share with you. Nowadays I'm doing consulting, so helping companies cheat. So what we're going to talk about today is about market relevance. So it's the notion that what is the topic that is going to be interesting for a specific audience. And we're going to talk about this subject as a designer, because I started as a game designer, as a creative director, because then I moved to being creative director, making games, and then as a conclusion, I'm going to tell you what I think is the structure, the DNA of a blockbuster. So, you know, market relevance, at one point I was talking to a friend in Vancouver, and he was telling me about his new game, and I thought, okay, how can you be market relevant? And he said, oh, do you mean how to build controversy? Like how to have people talk about your game. It's not really how to be controversial, it's more about just how to be right in tune with what people are asking themselves, so you kind of feed off their desire, their inner questions. And so, you know, for me, market relevance it's not so much getting into the wallet of people. You know, we talk a lot about monetization and how to get sales. It's more about how to get into the heart and mind of the audience to really create a strong tie with your brand, and this is how you build a brand. You can build a product and make money, but to build a brand that people want to follow and see the next one of, you really need to connect at emotional level. So that's what I mean by market relevance, is how can you find these topics that the people really need actually to hear about. And you probably heard about tablets, you know, you heard about the iPad. But before the iPad, actually, maybe in 2000, like a couple of years before the iPad came out, the PC tablet was out, which is the same type of product. And it was super cool, tablet PC, but it was not so cool actually. So they missed the window. They were actually too early. Or maybe the way they communicated that fantasy was not the right one. But technology was the same. So market relevance also applies to disruptive tech. You know, the technology evolves, and it really succeeds when it meets the needs of the people. If it's too early, you miss the window. If it's too late, well, you're too late. Someone else already has done it. So market relevance actually applies to creative work, but also to technology work, or just to products in general. So here you have two paintings of two grandmasters. And on one side, well, both of them actually challenge the way we perceive reality. On one side, you have one guy that died in poverty, never made I I was about to say never made a dollar because I live in Canada now, but never made a penny. Yeah, that would be better. Never made a penny out of the painting and lived in misery and had, became mad and chopped one of his hair off. And on the other side of the screen, you have a guy that was hugely successful, like commercially successful, socially successful, because he was right at the right moment. But nowadays, we look at them and they're both grandmasters. I mean, every other their painting is like would go for millions or even billions. I don't even know, but like the price would be crazy. But at the time, one of them was market relevant, the other wasn't. So the question is, how can we be like the guy on the right of the screen? Not so much like the guy on the left, unless you just want to end up crazy and with one ear off. So, if you look at this painting, Guernica, it really explained, or it really helped people understand what happened at Guernica. At the time, it was the first time in history where a ruler would use so much destructive force, like the full power of modern weaponry, against its own people, to wipe out a whole village. And at the time, people heard about it, but they could not comprehend. They were like, how can it be even possible? They would not even be able to speak about it. It would be unspeakable, literally unspeakable. So there was a need to manipulate that concept. That painting served that purpose. At the time, you could not have shown pictures of what happened. People would have said, no, I don't want to look at it. It's taboo. Because, socially speaking, we're not ready to deal with that issue. But there was still a need to manipulate that concept. So that painting actually helped by proposing an allegory of what happened. It's not the real thing, it's just a metaphor. But it helps me imagine, start thinking, start discussing about what happened. So it really, solves a need that's really hidden deep inside, so much that you wouldn't be able to talk about it at the time. So if you're able to detect these questions that people feel bad about so much that they cannot talk about, but they need, if you can give them an allegory and help them untie that problem, you're their best friend. And then they want to keep with that brand, because that brand solves a problem that no one else can. So the question becomes, how can we find these inner issues that people have inside themselves but can't really untie on their own? If you can address them, then you have a strong topic with market relevance. So that's kind of what I mean by market relevance. So, at first I started as a game designer. I had a great haircut. Actually, that's a wig. But the problem of it is that it looks like my real hair. That's the problem of my life. Like I would walk down the street, people would look at me like, why do you have that hair? And it's not my hair, it's a wig. But people, anyways. So at the start, I was a game designer. And obviously, at that point, I was not thinking of creative process and being an artist and having market relevance. My job was just to make rules. So I make rules, I make game systems. And because I'm also French, I was exposed to national sport, football. And I never really liked football because every time I would look at a game, I'm a game designer, so for me, a game is supposed to celebrate the most skilled player or the most skilled team. I would look at football. I would look at football, and every time I would see people kind of cheat. Like, people kind of like say, oh yeah, the ball is here, but I'm going to pretend I'm touching it, but I'm not touching it until it goes out of bounds, and then, oh, it's throwing, and actually, oh, I'm about to throw it, and then I throw it in like 5 meters away from what it was supposed to be thrown in. And as a game designer, it was really infuriating. So I never really liked football. But what's interesting is when you look at the rules of the game, there's one rule that the referees cannot use video reviews to make a judgment call. Although, if you're in the stadium or if you're at home, you see the replays, but the referee cannot look at them to make a call. So that's super weird because it's a rule against the rules. So I was like, that's really weird. And so the fact that the rules prevent the referee to enforce the rules makes it that cheating becomes a strategy. And it's by design. It's intentional. And it really feels like it's terrible design. You feel like, why would you make that rule? But you have to look at the fact that the sport is usually successful. It's the most successful sport on the planet. So it means it is market relevant. It means that it satisfies an audience needs. So the question is, who is it popular to? Any idea? What's the target audience for soccer, football?
Everyone. Really wide.
Everyone?
Yeah.
I beg to differ. Because if you look at Wimbledon, in the rule, everybody has to be dressed in white. Even Andre Agassi, at the height of his career, like flamboyant and everything, he would have to dress in white if he was to play in Wimbledon. Why? Because the Queen is here watching. It's civilized people. Actually, what's the target for tennis? It's not everyone. Now, how do they deal with replays in tennis? They actually give you replays. They give you even better, or they actually give you 3D simulations of the trajectory of the ball, and they zoom until infinity to tell you if the ball was in or out. Now, imagine you would show this to the audience of a football game. They might not appreciate the effort in technology. They might riot. They might say, you guys are trying to cheat us. Now, what happens with the referee? And actually going back to, now, who do you think these guys are? Like the core audience of football?
They're the working class, the people who have more passion than they can actually channel in their real life. So they're looking for a way out to vent it. So they're extremely passionate about it, and it's a sort of coping with the harshness of the reality for them.
You don't need me. Come in here and give my talk. Sure. The answer I'm looking for at that point, although you analyze it's interesting, is working class, mostly popular audience. Actually, it's more specific than this, but let's keep it at there. So, the rule of referees cannot use replays to make a judgment call. It's a rule that basically makes the representative of authority weak. It makes it that the referee is going to make mistakes. I'm not super violent, but whenever I watch football, after like 10 minutes, I'm insulting the referee. That guy is blind. That guy doesn't know better. Shoot that guy. Kill that guy. Actually, sometimes in countries, referees get shot when they call the wrong penalty kick. So the referee is the authority. And by design, the rules make it so the representative of authority is going to look stupid. Now, for the working class, pretty much for all of us, which is where, there's a bit of truth in what you said, that it's for all of us. We all have bosses, and maybe if we don't have bosses, we have politicians, we have people that have authority upon us. And you know what? We all think they're stupid. We might not say it out loud, but the boss is fucking stupid, right? So I am frustrated at work, I'm frustrated at home, and then if you tell me come to the stadium where you see the boss looking stupid and you can insult him and you know better than him because you see the replays, I'm in. I want to go there because it satisfies, it fights my frustration about authority. So it is very relevant to that audience. In my opinion, the meaning of football is life is unfair, deal with it. Because it's not always the strongest team that will win. Actually, I think in the last Euro, we stole the victory from Germany. The French team did. It was a robbery. Like we had no business. They were way better than us. But you can sneak one in. You can. If no one sees you, you can get penalty kick or something. You can score a game. You can win a game you have no business winning. Life is unfair. You might be weaker. It's unfair. But in that game, you have a way to take your revenge. So this meaning, if that's, I don't know, I don't even know if they actually have a meaning decided. But if that type of meaning actually speaks to, lower class, popular class, it's like, yeah, I get my revenge. Now, we talked about, popular class, but it's also very popular in the Latin countries. Actually, I travel a lot to Latin America. Europe is very popular. It's not so popular in North America. So it's mostly the Latin countries. Now, do you know what's the founding city of Latin culture was Rome? Do you know what the symbol of Rome is? You probably know. The symbol is Romulus and Remus feeding off the Capitoline wolf. This is the symbol of the cradle of Latin culture. We're just like, we get whatever we can. Whatever, life is unfair for these guys, but they'll do whatever they need to do to survive and succeed. Now, if you compare to North America, football is not super popular in North America. Now, what is the symbol of North America? Actually, of the US? It's this. They actually carved out the face of their founders on a mountain. What it says to me is, we control nature. We have the technology. We can get rid of our animal roots and we control nature. Actually, if you look at the cities in North America, they look like this. It's all like straight lines, very efficient. If you compare it to our European cities, it's like a mess. It just grew out of necessity because we didn't have the technology. We just grew as we went. So it's a very different mindset. I mean, the US, they even went to the moon, right? They control nature. For them, they control nature. I mean, their history starts 250 years ago, or maybe 300. I'm not so good with history. But for them, history starts where people were already able to write. For us, we're like feeding off wolves. It's a very different mentality. Now, if you look at the way they deal with sports in North America, the rules, they are enforced very strictly. Like they have the technology to know if the ball left the hand of Michael Jordan at that decimal of a second or not. We're gonna have replays. We're gonna have high-speed cameras to know if the foot was still on court or not. Ooh, interesting. In football, the main difference, as I said, hey, I'm here. Oh, I'm actually not doing the throw-in where I should be doing it. Even time, the way we handle time in football, it's, okay, let's go for 45 minutes. We let the timer run. Oh, we stop play. Oh, I'm not gonna bother like stopping the timer. We let it run. And then at the end of it, I'm like, oh, maybe let's add 4 minutes. But maybe we only play 2, actually, I don't really care. For North American, it's like, what is it? Are you guys like cavemen? Can't you just press stop on the timer? Like, it doesn't make any sense for them. Like, for them, it's like, look, the fault was done here. You should kick the ball from here. Like, what are you doing? So it's a very different way of looking at this. Now, if you look at the creative director of football, very, very nice guy. So that's what he said about the notion of should we have replays. He said, in 2008, he said, no, making mistakes, it's part of the fascination of football. It is part of the DNA. We have to see errors. 2008, that's no goal. There's no goal here. And then 2 years later, another guy from FIFA said, no, it's not so different from other sports. And not all sports have technology, so why should we have technology? So their statement is clear. It's okay, even with this. No, the technology exists, but why should we use it? Errors is part of the sport. Okay, so now fast forward 3 years later, 2013, the same ladder. Now he says, I insist that the referees have high-tech aids to rule on disputed goal line incident. And he says, yeah, we're going to put a chip in the ball. And we're even going to have, the spray to make sure that the wall stays at the right distance. And you can see the Mexican team, they're like, but I'm supposed to, no, don't do it. He's going to catch you. Like, it doesn't make sense for Latin people. We're like, yeah, okay, we're supposed to be here. Yeah, I know. Oh, there's a line now. Okay, there's something wrong. So what changed here? Before he said, no, it's part of the game. We want the mistakes. It's part of the excitement. And 5 years later, he said, no, I insist. We need the top technology. Do you know what happened? What happened actually is football is making a push in North America now. Like the Major League Soccer in North America is becoming big. And this happened right before the World Cup in Brazil, which is on the same time zone as North America. So they knew the audience, North American audience would watch it, and they couldn't have these Mexicans like, they would say, oh, you guys, what's that sport? Like, they couldn't have that penalty, that no goal, although the ball clearly passed the line. So that's why you have a full 180 on the statement, because they target a different audience and they want to be market relevant to that audience. So that's how I look at it from a game design perspective. Just looking at rules that make no sense, and then statement that makes no sense, and then you look at, okay, yeah, it makes sense because they want to target, they want to be relevant to that audience or to that audience. Now, as a creative director, so now I'm not just making rules. I'm like the director of a game, like a movie director before a game. And as I was, looking at the competition, you look at one of the key success stories of the last 10 years is Call of Duty 4. Like Modern Warfare actually turned the license from 2 to 4 million copies per game to 10 to 15 million copies a game. it's the first game that created lineups before the opening of the shops at midnight. So it was a huge transformation culturally of how people consume video games. So it must have been super relevant to that audience to really change from, hey, it's okay, 2-3 million copies a game to 10-15 million copies a game. And so you might remember that the first game was all about, like, you know, a plot, very highly cinematic in between Eastern Europe and Middle East, fight against terrorists. Actually, funnily enough, at the bottom of the box, the enemies were international separatists. I wonder what international separatists want to separate into. They separate into the moon? I don't know. I don't know. But so, you look at the game, and the opening sequence of the game, you're in first person, and you're the president of that Middle Eastern country that's going against under revolution, and they drag you into a car, and they drag you like through the city, and they get you in front of that camera, and they execute you. So you're first person executed. That's the start of the game. Wow. Now, second level of the game, you're one of these Marines, and you are parachuted into one of this Middle Eastern city, and you're at night with night vision goggles, and there's like anti-aircraft fire. Okay. Then I think it's the fourth or fifth level of the game. You're in that plane above the ground, and you're shooting down. Okay. And now you look at these three pictures, and you remember what was on the news 10 years before. It was exactly the same thing. Like, you had these executions, you had, you know, that happened for us like during the day. During the night for us. Although for the US, it was during the day. But do you remember that night when they attacked Kuwait, they attacked like the Iraqi forces, and you had like all that green screen, it looked like a fireworks. It's actually exactly the same thing that happened. Even like they sold us the surgical strikes that you see on the third picture. It's so similar that you have a hard time knowing which one is the video game, which is the real footage from CNN. The thing is, when the game came out, the 10 years before, CNN had fed these Americans, and also us to an extent, these pictures. And they had sent the Marines overseas to a country they don't know anything about. It was a huge amount of stress. So now I tell you, you're going to be able to play it yourself to exorcise that tension. Sure, I'm in, because it's really relevant to what I've been experiencing, but I haven't been able to untie it. So I think this is what made the game so relevant at the time. And then, you know, it became such a phenomenon that it didn't become so progressive, but actually, like the last one, I lost count, but there was one with Kevin Spacey. And the speech he gave, what people are ready to have security, even if it means relinquishing liberties. They want someone that will decide and rule them. Look at politics around us. This is what we see in all countries. People going like super hard on liberties, but because we need to be protected from terrorists. You know, it's the same story. They try to be relevant to what's going on right now. So, you know, I looked at this and I was like, okay. And at one point, I had to work on my own game. So I was working on Rainbow Six. So the next Rainbow Six, following Vegas. And at the time at Ubisoft, I really had a problem because Vegas had been so successful that it had become the brand in the mind of everybody at Ubisoft. People were saying, "Oh, are you working on the next Vegas?" I'm like, no. I'm working on the next Rainbow Six. Vegas is not our brand. We actually bought the Tom Clancy brand. We own the Rainbow Six brand. We don't own the Vegas brand. I'm making the next Rainbow Six. So I really had to dig deep and say, okay, what is that brand? And how can I explain it to the people at Ubisoft and also find a way to be market relevant? Now, the brand itself was created by Tom Clancy, I think in the 1980s. And at the time, so it's an elite anti-terrorist force that takes the best element of every counter-terrorist force on the different countries, creates a secret unit that goes against the terrorist attacks. But that was in the 80s. And the terrorist attacks in the 80s, they were like, okay, let's take hostages, and I have my laundry list of requests. Bring me a pizza, save my friends, bring me, give me a helicopter, I want $1 million, all that list. And if you don't do my stuff, I'm going to shoot one hostage every 5 minutes. That's how they dealt with it. But nowadays, it's not how terrorists do. They don't discuss. They come, they blow themselves up, and that notion of handling terrorism is not adapted anymore. So the brand of Rainbow Six at the time had become obsolete because that was not relevant of nowadays. Now, Modern Warfare, on Modern Warfare 2 and 3, they actually started Task Force 141, which is a secret organization where they pick the best of each special agent force in different countries to fight terrorists. They replaced us. They took over. So I was like, okay, so even internally, people don't even remember that we have the brand, and these guys took our space. So we have to find what does the fight against terrorism mean today? And because I'm just a French guy and we're in Quebec, so I was with guys from Quebec, we're not like the most redneck American people, so we don't really know what's going on. So we had to look at what was going on south of the border. And before that, like the story was, there was a big resentment against politicians because they had lied to the American people. They said, this is the proof of mass destruction weapons, so we need to go attack Saddam Hussein, and that was false. But then they sent all the army, and all the money actually went to Halliburton, which these guys are on the board of. So it's like, but what's going on? And this is all a story about food for oil to kind of support the Iraqi people and go around the embargo to actually help people with medicine and everything. But actually, it just ended up with money being diverted to private American interest. So the people in the US were like having bad conscience about the politicians that were saying, you guys are serving corporate interests, not the people's interest. And at the time was the first campaign of Obama. And his line was to say, to oppose Wall Street, like the finance, and Main Street, the people. He said, that's what he said. Oh, you don't see. So he said, we cannot have a thriving Wall Street, so a successful Wall Street, while Main Street suffers. We cannot have like finance make tons of money while real people in America are starving because they don't have food. That's not good. So the whole campaign was about Main Street versus Wall Street. When he got elected, this is his first decision. So the first executive order, that's the day he got into office. He said, we're going to close Guantanamo base. So he didn't do it. But that's still the first decision he made. So I looked at it and I said, oh, he just got elected. So he knows what's relevant to the US. And that's the first decision he makes. What does it mean? What does Guantanamo represent?
Previous administration's interests?
Sure, but what happens in Guantanamo?
Well, these people are detained without knowing the injustice.
It's unjust. There's torture.
Yeah.
So we're fighting terrorists, but we're torturing them. They have no right. We detain them without trial. It's like we're fighting terrorists, but to fight them will become as bad as they are. So that's why I think he said the symbol is we need to become the white knights again. Because that's you know, for the American people, it's like, oh, we're supposed to fight for freedom and liberty, but we're not, I mean, we're detaining people with no rights. So this is like, you know, Nietzsche's quote about the fact that if you look into the abyss, if you fight the bad guys, you might actually become a monster yourself. So I was like, okay, so there's something here where the American people might actually feel bad because their elites are actually screwing them over, and they need to feel like we're on the right side. Are we the good guys or not, right? They need to feel like we're the good guys. So on one hand, you had the Tom Clancy brand versus what Modern Warfare has done. You had Main Street versus Wall Street. You had the fact that they felt really bad about Guantanamo. Actually, you know, even the terrorists, they actually use these orange suits for the executions as a symbol. So that was like the background of what I looked at South America. And so I said, okay, let's have a bad guy that's a mastermind that's going to manipulate the hero into putting him against like these terrorist situations, forcing him to become as bad as these terrorists. Kind of like Batman. You know, Batman and Joker, when Batman tortures the Joker, Joker says, you know, you're actually as bad as I am. So kind of that narrative, except because we're Rainbow Six, we supposedly have the intelligence, we have the information, we know who the real bad guys are. And in that story, the real bad guys are not these people from the Middle East. The real bad guys are the banks, Wall Street. And so we created that hero basically that had to go through all these shitty situations and had to actually do these horrible things for good. And the notion was the true hero is not the white knight. The true hero is the person that goes through nightmares and he's going to live in nightmares for the rest of his life, so the rest of us can sleep tight. So it's a message that speaks both to the left and the right hand, because, you know, it's kind of like subversive, but it's also kind of patriotic, because, yeah, it's a true hero. And that led us to that concept, Rainbow Six Patriots. And what's funny is, when we released the trailer that I'm going to show you, actually a couple months later, Occupy Wall Street happened. So we pretty much anticipated that there would be riots against Wall Street. And the story of Patriots was like crazy people fighting the system would take over Manhattan and occupy Wall Street. And even like recently, you had the guys that occupied the natural parks and saying, oh, the federal government, they're not good. And we, in our game, there were all these militia that are actually training in private land with guns that would go against the government. So we kind of were able to anticipate what happened just from analysis. So I'm going to show you, are we good with time? How much time do we have?
Yeah, we're still good.
How much?
5 to 10.
Oh, okay. All right, so let me show you the trailer, obviously, I hope. So that's Bill Gates taking a swim. No, I don't think. You know what? I think I won't be able to play the video, or maybe I can. Quickly. Conference. Okay. Maybe not. All right, well, I can't. It's okay, never mind. So, so that's for Rainbow Six Patriot. Now, if you look at other topics, look at a topic like zombies. Zombies are quite popular. Everybody loves zombies. Now, why? My interpretation is that, we used to be a very social species. We used to depend on each other because we were so weak. We had to have one guy that's like the hunter, one guy that's making clothes, one guy that's cooking. We had to have roles. Nowadays, the situation is very different. We don't need each other so much. Actually, the others become more a nuisance sometimes. You're outside, you have to wait in line, people are noisy, and I don't need these other people anymore. To the extent that sometimes when there's a sale, I really don't like these people. Now, but I can't really say that I hate other people because it's kind of like taboo. It actually goes against our DNA. Our DNA says, no, we should be friends. We should need each other. We should rely on each other. But this weird society is turning us into, we hate each other, but we can't really say it. Now, if you give me a fantasy where the others are not really human, they're dead or infected, and they want to kill me, and I have a shotgun. Yeah, sure, bring it on. I want these zombies. And you have, it's a big trend of, I kind of hope there would be a zombie outbreak because I wonder how well I would survive. Is it really I wonder how well I would survive? Or is it just that I have that need of kill you all? You can make your mind. I made mine. Not that I want to kill you all, but I think that's the narrative. Now, no, it's a trend. You have, you can make games about zombies, you can make stories about zombies, movies, TV series, comics. But if you just make a new item about zombies, I read it, and I get my fix of zombies, and then I'm going to look for the next one. Now, what is a brand, especially in video games, that actually becomes a real brand that goes beyond zombies? It's The Last of Us. The Last of Us is actually not a game about zombies. The Last of Us is a game about a topic that's further. What's really interesting is the YouTube videos, like the advertisement on the release, you had a trailer where you saw the girl that was talking about the father figure, and she was saying, he told me that either you hang on onto your morals and die, or you do whatever it takes to survive, which is very zombie-esque. Let go of morality, just do whatever it takes to survive. But actually, when you play the game, it's not at all about this. It's more about that relationship between a father and a daughter. And the meaning, I said I don't know for sure. I made that talk a couple months ago. And in the meantime, there was an interview where the guys actually said, this is what we wanted to say. So I read it again. But it's more about, to protect someone you care about, you would do things you would never thought possible. Because these guys, they grew up, they had kids, and they started realizing, wow, now that I have someone that I care so much for, my vision of human interaction is so changed. So the game is actually not about zombies. It's about something that goes way beyond zombies. And now, people are waiting for The Last of Us 2. Way more than they're waiting for any other zombie game. Because it speaks to them in a deeper way. And actually, it speaks about human nature. It speaks about human relationship the same way. Zombie, I feel the fight of zombies because, I hate you, so I want to shoot you with a shotgun, but I can't. It's about my problem with the fact that I can't deal with that tension. And then it diverts that tension to something positive that gives me wisdom about human nature. And now I go out of this transformed, which is so relieving that I want to see the next one. So now it becomes a brand, which is not about zombies. It's a brand about human relationship. So, it's just like if you look at the Hunger Games, what is the target for the Hunger Games series?
Fight against capitalism.
The demographic target. Teenagers, millennials. How do they feel about life? How do they feel about their future? Do they have a job? What? Insecure. They might they might get a degree. Will they have a job? They don't know. Will they have a planet to live on? They don't know. The economy is destroyed. And on top of that, there are parents that call them millennials and they say, oh, but you have it easy with your iPads. You're so entitled. And they feel like, but you guys destroyed the whole system. And on top of that, you call us entitled? But they can't do it because it's taboo. They cannot say it to their parents. So that's the tension. And then what happens in the movie, the adults capture the teenagers, they run experiments on them, they make compete against each other, they destroy the whole planet, and these guys break free. So they're not so entitled and waiting and passive, they actually do something about it. So it's solving that inner need. So last part is to talk about of course. Yeah, so what's the DNA of a blockbuster? You probably heard about what happened with Edward Snowden when he actually made these revelations. The next week, the sales of 1984 climbed by 6,000%. Interesting. So what I think happens is it starts by a fantasy that's usually written by sometimes like sci-fi or fantasy writers, and they feel there's something, maybe they're not really fully able to articulate it, but they still write about it. Then there's real life facts that actually confirm it. And then it becomes something that the mainstream is able to latch onto. Now the only problem with this is it takes about 3 to 4 years to make a game like Watch Dogs. So you have to be able to look at this fantasy and see the early signs that it might actually become something real or that people actually care about. Because, we're sensitive, so if we start caring about it, it means it's already happening. But you have to be sensitive about it. And really what it means to me is that, you have that element of tension. It's like, there's something that's wrong, but I can't really talk about it because it's so new or socially it's unacceptable. Then you create drama about it. And drama really means exaggerated allegory, an exaggerated metaphor. This is why you have the a huge laugh and the very huge frown. So you laugh or you cry, it's exaggerated. So much that it looks like a parody. It doesn't look like the real thing. So I'm able to read it and consume it and say, it's okay. If you show me the real thing, I don't want to see it. But if you exaggerate it and dramatize it, I can consume it. And then you bring me catharsis. So you transform me. So actually now I'm free from that tension. So here is, like, for example, the fact that, we have Guantanamo and there's more security around us and we're letting go of our liberties. If you create drama about it, it creates interest. So that's the zombie. If I make something about zombies, it creates interest. But if you give me change, that's what creates a brand. That's the Last of Us thing, where what Last of Us brings, no other zombie game is bringing to you. Which is why Last of Us becomes a brand that goes beyond zombies, while any other zombie book or movie or game is just a zombie game. So, it's really about looking forward or listening to these early signs. And the thing is, our media system amplifies everything because they start talking about it, and whatever gets some buzz, people even talk even more about it. So it's really about finding these early signs. And you can find them at, the indie movie festivals or like small comics, like these niche authors. If you're on the lookout for them, they are going to talk about stuff. If you find something that seems odd, just like the referee, the rule of football that prevents referee to make a decision call, dig on it and try to understand, why do you find it odd? And that's how you can see, does it have leg, and is it something that can actually become something that is going to be market relevant, that people are going to pick up on, and that it actually can talk to people. So, example. So I actually gave that talk in Brazil, and I go often to Latin America, and I tell them, look at your environment. Their environment is very religious. Also, they had huge economical growth, but there's still like discrepancy between the poor people and the rich people, and it's actually widening. So the rich get rich, there's a middle class now, but the poor stay poor, which actually clashes with a very religious society. So there's probably something bad about this, that people feel like, yeah, my kid wants an iPhone and I have the money to buy him an iPhone, but I feel it goes against my values. He should at least know not to feel like, oh, everything is due to me. I should at least understand that I should still help the people that need it. So for example, that might be something that culturally is relevant for that market. It's often easier to look at other markets. So this is why I'm just giving you that other example to another society. Because again, our market means our own dilemmas and our own things that you cannot taboos. It's our own taboos. So it's difficult to actually dig into it. And same thing with the Chinese. Like one of the very successful and popular Chinese artists, that's what he painted. So happy, but we're still executing you. I showed this to Chinese people. They never heard about that guy, of course, because they don't want to hear about it. So yeah, basically what I mean is, it is possible to anticipate what's happening. And actually, if it's easier to do it in a culture that's not yours. I did it for the US market because I'm not from the US, so it's easier for me to find things that I find odd, because if I grew up there, it would find natural. So that's how I would look at it. And so for me, I think finding market relevance is finding what is going to be successful even before you make a game. So it's almost how you cheat the system, because they tell you fail fast. Fail fast means make a game and maybe you'll be lucky. What I'm telling you is cheat. So yeah, maybe it sounds crazy, or you can try this, and either you can make games that are successful, or you can become an astrologist and a medium and make a career as predicting what's happening in the life of people. All right, so that's what I have. So feel free to send me emails and follow me on Twitter, and I'm always happy to have discussions if you have questions. Do we have any questions? Yes.
So this probably applies only to narrative games, games with story. If you want to make, a twin stick shooter, you cannot really predict it, right? Because there's no story, there's no drama, there's just mechanics.
So my first example was the tablet. Honestly, I think you can do the same approach in terms of needs to just a product. Like, example is, look at Candy Crush. So the process is, you look, something that's successful must be relevant. Candy Crush is successful. Who is it successful with?
Well, the house moms and stuff.
Precisely. 35, 40 plus female. Okay, what's the life of a house mom like? How do they feel?
Undervalued.
They feel undervalued. You're pretty smart.
Well, yeah, so they demand some rewarding busy work that keeps them occupied and happy. So
Like, these people are educated, but their everyday life doesn't challenge them intellectually. So, but they are capable, so they feel like, my life kind of sucks because, I would like to be challenged intellectually more. Now, what is Candy Crush? A puzzle game. A puzzle game with progress. So I have level 1, level 2, level 3. So I might just be waiting for laundry to finish, which sucks. But at least I passed 3 levels. So I have clear acknowledgement that I am actually smart. So you can apply the same type of approach to a product. I gave you more of a, so this is external need. What I covered was mostly internal needs. But I think the same analysis works for both. That's my answer to you.
all right, thanks.
Other questions, please? Yes?
Yeah, one of the central theses that I understood in your talk was sort of look out for things that are on the horizon, but maybe not right now, but in like 5 years, or whenever a game like Watch Dogs or Rainbow Six or whatever takes to develop. And I know you might be revealing too much, but is there any trend in either Europe or the United States, which you see sort of just on the horizon right now, which people can focus on?
Sure. Honestly, if you look at what's happening, right now, situation is pretty bleak. Like, politics-wise, in every country, in the U.S., in Europe, everybody's like going like right wing. Like, I want to close down the borders. Why? So that's odd. That at the same time, all countries start closing down, and they say, "Oh, let's blame the immigrants." There's all these things. My reading of this is that it starts to be a shift of balance. Like, it's the first time in history that the next generation is going to have lower life expectancy than the previous one. All our growth so far was, life is going to get better. We're going to have it easier than the previous generation. It's the first time when it's not the case. At the same time, the shift of power is shifting from Europe and US to Asia. So we feel like it's slipping away. On top of this, you have uncertainty about the planet. So it really looks like the future kind of looks bleak. And that's probably a source of stress for a lot of people, at least in the East, in the West, but actually even in the East, because in China they feel like there's so much pollution, everybody wants to leave the country. So, what I'm saying is, look at the symptoms. So you look at the symptoms and you see Trump, you see even in France, like everybody's going super extreme right, it's crazy. Like, there's so many countries. I don't know what's happening in Slovakia, but maybe it's the same. Why not, right? So look at the symptoms, but don't stop at the symptoms, because the symptoms are the surface. Try to find the cause and what's hidden behind the surface that actually creates these symptoms. And if you can find links between like deeper cause and the symptoms, you have something.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah. you see like some odd stuff and you've made a game, but it didn't graduate it yet to the highest point, should you actually wait for a game release? So you release it after it really boomed the problem?
So my approach is to cheat the system. So fail fast means you make the whole game and maybe you'll be right, maybe you'll be wrong.
Okay.
What I think is this type of analysis, you can verify it and you can do research even before you do the first line of code.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's when you are already done with the game, it's finished, but there isn't yet, like, it's starting the problem, but the problem hasn't really reached everyone. So you should wait after it reaches the broader audience, or should you release it?
Also, you're saying maybe you made the tablet PC
Yeah.
and you wonder, should I wait? I've never been in that situation. What I would say is ship the game and that frees your mind to think of something else. That would be my approach, but
Okay.
I mean, it really depends on situation.
Thank you.
Cheers. Any more questions? Yes.
I'm asking about Assassin's Creed. Have you done this same approach, market strategy, or it was just a random idea, or how is the story behind?
So I was not in the Saints of Saints when working at that level at Assassin's Creed. What I think really helps with the success of the brand, it's more like an external need. At the time it came out, it was the release of the next generation of consoles, 360 and PS3. This PS3 was super expensive. Like it was $700, I don't know, maybe euros, but it was crazy expensive. It looked like a big Foreman grill, it looked like a freaking barbecue grill. So you bought it, the people that bought it at Christmas, they had that need of social justification. Why did you buy that thing? I show you Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is a game that the previous generation was not able to run. So it satisfied that need. Now, there was also, actually, I thought of it, I've been in Bratislava for a couple of days now, and I just walk around, and now I live in North America, so there's no real tourism there. But here you see everybody's like taking pictures, and there's old stones. And here, like tourism and seeing old stones. And actually there was that plaque that said, Mozart played a concert here. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. It means that Mozart actually walked that street one day. And I'm not like crazy about history, but it's something that's very relevant as mostly an external need. It's just something that people are excited about with tourism and with history in a casual sense. Like traveling and going to historical places is quite popular. But this is more of a mainstream appeal, which then makes sense with the positioning of Assassin's Creed, which is a game that you can barely lose at. It's a very easy game, actually. You just hold 2 buttons and you win. So all of these aligns to that type of demographic. So I'm not sure how they did it at that time, but that's the way I would decode it. Yeah. Yes?
Do you think that people are becoming lazy and they actually require easy games so they can win and I don't know, feel better that they achieve something even if it's really easy nowadays to...
Yes, there's that trend, but you can also say that it's because there's more people playing now, so the audience is broader. And then it means you have more people that have less patience and that just want gratification. They don't, it's just like TV. Look at TV. TV, there's very little programs that are deep and make you think, but that's because it reaches a lot of people. So I think that it's not really about today's, it's just that when the broader you reach, the lesser the effort you should require from your target. Yes. And then, it comes from the fact that you're not making the game for yourself. You don't write a book to read it. You don't make a movie to watch it. Unless if you just want to be like a hobbyist, if you want to have some success, you should not try to make a game for yourself.
Final question, anybody?
Yeah, maybe me.
Yes.
What about World War II era, 10 years ago? You said like there's this trending. What about World War II? You know what I mean?
So,
Like
can you
10
be
years
more
ago,
precise?
There was like Call of Duty 1 and 2, Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
It was a huge success. It was all about World War II.
Yeah.
You've also made Company of Heroes, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think there was this success behind it? Like
So,
in that period?
so at that time, it was the period of the 50th anniversary of D-Day. And in the US, you had a lot of people that had grandparents that were involved in war. Their children didn't know anything about it. So it was important for them to have something that they could share with their kids about why did grandpa went there and sacrificed himself so we could have freedom. Freedom, democracy. I think that's that need. It's a generational need. Because, if I'm a dad and my dad died during World War II, and I have these values, I want something that helps me to convey these values to my kids. And so I think this is why you had so much success with Saving Private Ryan, but also Band Brothers, all these TV series and games that actually talked about it, because there was that need to actually tell that new generation what was war, what it meant at the time. But these guys, they didn't go to war, so they actually don't know. So that's that need of sharing with the new generation, my opinion.
Thank you.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, Alex, for the talk.
Thank you.